At the start of July, I went bikepacking with a friend in Norfolk and Suffolk. Our route was a 180-mile loop starting and ending in the town of Diss. On the first day, we set off from Diss just after lunch and headed for a campsite in Saxmundham, following a mix of bridleways and roads. After we pitched our tents, we headed out again to grab a pint in the White Hart Inn in Aldeburgh. We went via Sizewell and Thorpe Ness, mostly on gravelly and sandy tracks. We returned to the campsite by road and went to the nearby Poacher's Pocket pub for our evening meal. The next morning we set off up the coast, heading initially for Southwold, where we picked up some breakfast before continuing north through Lowestoft and Great Yarmouth. The route to Southwold was part of the Marriots Way, and it was really excellent with lots of great off-road sections. We stopped in Yarmouth to eat the sausage rolls that we'd bought in Southwold when we were getting the breakfast stuff, before heading on to the next campsite in Happisburgh. The route north of Yarmouth was all road, so we took the opportunity to put a bit more air in our tyres before setting off. In Happisburgh we pitched the tents, grabbed a shower and went to the local pub for some food. The weather forecast on the final day was for thunderstorms in the afternoon, so we left camp at 7 AM hoping to get as many miles under our wheels as possible before the weather arrived. The route today would be a lot more gravel, so we dropped our tyre pressures before setting off. The route north of Norwich mostly consisted of the Weaver's Way and the Marriots Way, both of which are old railway lines converted to long-distance cycling and walking routes. They were a really fun, traffic-free way to get into the city. We got to Norwich in the dry, so grabbed a quick early lunch before pressing on, hoping that we might outrun the rain. The route from Norwich to Diss was borrowed from the Rebellion Way. It started as a hilly road route, but then it flattened out and took in a lot more byways and bridleways. Unfortunately, the rain and the thunder caught up with us south of Norwich. It was a warm day, so getting wet wasn't so bad, and by the time we got to Diss we were so wet it made no difference to ride through the ford instead of taking the bridge. This was a really wonderful trip. It was great to ride a long stretch of the coast and marry that up with the old railway lines and byways inland to make a fun loop. The riding in and out of Yarmouth was the least enjoyable part of the route, but the section from Saxmundham to Lowestoft was maybe my favourite. Having said that, I did really enjoy the whole of the last day, even if we did get soaked.